Australia's second largest city is to return to lockdown for 6 weeks. Stay-at-home restrictions will be reimposed in Melbourne from midnight tomorrow. Now, 5 million people will not be able to leave their homes for any purpose other than work, food, exercise or medical care. Victoria is responsible for 191 of 199 new cases reported nationally. It's the biggest one-day rise since early April.
Brianna Piazza has been following developments. She joins us now for more on this. Tell us, Brianna, is this lockdown the same as the previous one, and how does it work this time round?
So in a lot of ways, it is very similar to the last lockdown that Victorians emerged from just a few weeks ago, but there are some key differences, and that includes these rules will apply only to Melbourne residents and also those living in some regional areas, whereas the last lockdown, it was statewide, there were no exemptions. And this is very much in recognition of the fact that many regional and rural areas in Victoria actually have no new coronavirus cases. So in an effort to help them with their economic recovery post-lockdown, as well as to stop the spread of coronavirus into those areas, as of midnight tomorrow, Melbourne residents will no longer be able to travel outside of Melbourne, not even for exercise. So previously, many Melbourne residents were travelling into regional areas for things like day hikes. So that will no longer be allowed. And we know that many businesses that recently reopened, such as gyms and beauty parlours, they will have to shut their doors as of tomorrow. Cafes and restaurants, which were welcoming new patrons to dine at their venues, they will now only be able to offer takeaway and delivery services. And the other thing too is that small gatherings of families and friends inside people's homes, this is actually how many of the new community transmission cases have occurred, so that will also no longer be allowed. This is all in addition to a hard lockdown that is affecting more than 3,000 residents in public housing buildings in Melbourne. So as we understand, those residents are undergoing widespread testing. Hopefully within a few days, those who have returned a negative result will again be able to leave those buildings and be able to buy food and go to work. So these new restrictions will be in place for at least 6 weeks. Victorians are very much disappointed to not only be back at where we were a few weeks ago when the pandemic first began, but the situation now is actually much worse with high rates of community transmission.
Brianna, that border between Victoria and New South Wales, it tends to be busy and it is set to close today. So how are Melbourne and the rest of Victoria expected to cope with the double measures?
That's right. So Victoria and New South Wales, that's the two most populous states in Australia. Many people travel between Melbourne and Sydney for business purposes. So that's going to take a massive hit for those companies and businesses in that position. In less than a couple of hours, New South Wales will close its border to people in Victoria. It's understood that only people with a permit and a valid excuse, a good excuse to be travelling into New South Wales will be allowed by police. So authorities have given some examples of what a good excuse might be, and that could be things like attending a funeral. So no doubt this is going to take a heavy toll on business. Australian leaders estimate that this shutdown in Victoria will actually cost the economy $700 million every single week. It's caused Victoria's Premier, Daniel Andrews, to reach out to Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison, urging for financial support for Victorians to be extended, particularly the most hard-hit businesses.
Okay, many thanks for that update, Brianna Piazza, speaking to us from Melbourne.